freezing cold up here in Michigan. It was like negative 16 degrees outside today. So I hope wherever you are, you're warm, you're well fed, you're ready to kick back and just relax with some bros. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I've got the complete DM himself, Joel Peterson, has come on the show after a stunning and dramatic reversal. We aren't the first to bring this to you. You may have watched another show on Rumble where the T-shirt came off and the NWO was on underneath. But welcome to This is Dundermoose, Joel Peterson. How did you get wrapped up in this whole crazy X YouTube D&D kerfuffle in the first place?
Drug abuse. No, you know, we were talking a little bit before the show, and I was saying how this is kind of my first time interacting with the D&D X community, or even the YouTube community, whatever you want to call it. But I guess it really started quite a few years ago when I started finding D&D guys on YouTube. I'd say the one I liked the most was probably Professor Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
And back when I started watching him, he was pretty small at that time. Like his channel was new, and I just thought, hey, this guy's got a lot of interesting things to say. I like the cut of his jib. And then I started getting into other stuff related to D&D on YouTube, but I never got into like the live plays and the Matt Mercers of the world and stuff. I kind of heard about those guys through him eventually. But when we started a game company early in 2024, and we started out making a board game, and we prototyped that, and then we didn't want to spend the money on producing that, so we moved to video games. I thought, well, we better get on social media, and we better start kind of moving into that territory and pumping this stuff up, because eventually we're going to want to sell it. And so I had an X account that had just been sitting there for years that was untouched. And I thought, well, I don't know anybody on here. I don't have anyone on my friends list. I'll just start, scoping out the territory. And at that time, I had just started, I think, my Substack blog where I talked about D&D, and I started finding D&D people on there. And then I found the bros, and I found the drama. Oh my, the drama! I found all of it.
Was it dramatic when you joined, or did that come later?
It's always people bickering. It would be like every single opinion would have counter opinions and whole threads of people saying, "No, that's stupid. I don't like that idea." And so I did see it like right away. But I saw the brunt of it probably when I started figuring out who Jeffro was and the bros, and then the little kerfuffle with Nerd Cognito and all these other guys. And then I was like, oh, this is juicy, man. I want to get in on this. This is great stuff.
There was a request for the link to your Substack. I'm going to post it in the comments here.
Thanks. Yeah.
I'm still getting used to, as you guys have noticed, we tried a bunch of stuff on this channel. We were StreamYard, then we were Zoom, and now we're EV Mux. I'm kind of digging EV Mux, especially because they have a dark mode. It doesn't wash my face out with white. I mean, I can do that myself if I want to. So hopefully that link came through. Kara, if you could just chat and let me know if that link worked or not. I copied it out of your X profile, so I don't know if it. Hopefully it still works. Anyway, I totally interrupted you. You got on socials because you were like, I got a game and we want to pump it, and you want to start before. You want a big audience before you need them. You don't want to wait till you have a product and then tell your 12 friends, right?
Yeah, and I want to take a second to say you should go with the full white, dye the mustache white background, white sheet behind you, everything, and we won't even be able to see who you are.
Just like paste it out.
Man. Yeah, you have the complexion of my wife. She's very pale. I'm
what you call right indoorsy.
The indoorsy type. Yeah. Not the rugged.
I think I may be part vampire, actually. Like, I really dislike the smell and taste of garlic, and not I sunburn easily. Not enough for a scholarship or anything, like 164th at the most. But
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, as you said, it's cold where you are, and it warmed up where we are. So we've been experiencing a nice little respite from the negative 21 degrees
Ooh.
Celsius weather that we had over the weekend.
I don't think we ever got that low.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Negative 21.
And that's nothing, man. Like if when it hits February, we're like waiting for negative 39. That's what I'm
I've
looking up
heard
for.
that negative 40 degrees is the same at, like, that's when it gets so cold that Celsius and Fahrenheit like are both negative 40. Like that's where the two
That's right. They
overlap and
meet.
meet.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
I've heard in Montana it got to negative 50, and like there were people talking about you would go outside and it would become hard to blink because the water in your eyes was trying to freeze. And I'm like, why would
I've
you?
experienced this, and it's brutal, man.
Oh my
Just brutal.
gosh. Terrible.
I used to work as a plumber, and the coldest I've ever been in was negative 50, and it's because we were underneath a swimming pool. So we would work for like 15 minutes and then sit in a car for 15 minutes and
Oh my
just did that
gosh.
for 10 hours.
That's probably
It
good
was
for your skin.
brutal. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
You just
But
get
yeah, so
cracked.
I we wanted to do that, and then I once I got on here and started actually interacting with people, it became less cynical of hey, well, I want to push a product, and more about talking to people and having these conversations and
Yeah.
learning about all these concepts that I wasn't aware of before. Like I'd heard of Bronstein once, but that was just through that what was it, the Secrets of
Secrets of
Blackmore
Blackmore.
documentary.
Yeah.
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 And I fell
I'm
asleep like halfway through that. So I don't even know if I got to that part to begin with. I had to rewatch it after hearing about Bronstein through Jeffro and the boys. So,
yeah. I think everyone that's interested in Dungeons and Dragons, and especially if you want to know how it really started, like not what we were told, not the zeitgeist, but like what really happened. That show, they interview the people that were there. Um,
yeah.
and Dave Arneson was a much bigger part of it than we were led to believe. And I know
Yes.
just even saying that causes a rift, and people that have admitted to that, um, it causes trouble for them. And it is so weird to me.
Sure.
This is a game. This is an old game. The people that created it, it was clawed away from them by corporate greed and the corporations. Pretty much everybody that enjoys it, that's paying attention, is not best pleased with the people who own the brand right now. So I don't know why we're
Yeah.
still fighting over all this history stuff, but that's what nerds do, man. We like to fight. We say, well, could an X-wing blow up the Enterprise? And
Yeah.
everyone
Some
just
people
gets
care
mad.
about these things. God
Yeah.
knows why, but they do. Right. Could
So
Superman be Goku? And it's like, sure, I don't know, maybe.
yeah,
There's no way we're ever going to find that out,
neither
but
one of them exists at all. So the
that's
point
right.
is moot, right?
Go
Um,
ask them.
but yeah, we do have people get like very very invested, and I think that speaks to maybe how different this game or medium is than anything else. And I don't know if it's
Yeah.
just we're all just emotionally stunted. Maybe it's like drugs. Maybe like at whatever age you really started getting into D&D, you just stopped growing as a human. I don't want to think that's what it is, right?
We're all just on the spectrum. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
It's just own goal,
Everybody.
self-inflicted wound. That
Yeah.
is so not what an owl bear would do.
That's part of the screening process for autism now. Do you play Dungeons and Dragons? All right, check. Here's your Vyvanse.
Yeah.
You know?
So my experience was kind of like yours. I really don't know how. Like you can, my friend Unfiltered Ideas in the chat, and you can ask her. I used to just wonder what on earth people saw in X. I'm like, I was a LinkedIn guy. I was
Yeah.
like, nobody's posting pictures of their breakfast here. There's no, it's just everyone's serious. They're putting on their best. No politics. None of the stuff that keeps me off Facebook. Um,
Right.
and I didn't get X. Like it was so chaotic. I couldn't keep up with the flow. I didn't know how to search for stuff that I'd seen at once. And but once I got onto the D&D side of it, it got interesting to me. And
Yeah.
I don't know what your D&D. It sounds like you were already blogging about D&D. So like, have you been just hardcore since whatever version, or is it something that's been newer for you?
I guess I can give people here who don't know me a bit of a breakdown of where I come from, because I've done a lot of different stuff creatively over the years, right? So,
And you're
I
still
mean,
doing a lot of creative stuff, if you ask me,
I'm still
man.
trying. I'm still trying, and so I mean, I've been on the internet since like the late '90s, early 2000s, and was in forums and this sort of thing. But I went through like a number of blogs. I started writing when I was pretty young, but really seriously publishing stuff online
Hmm.
probably in my early 20s. And it started out,
How old
funny
are you
enough,
now?
so different. I'm 39 years
Ew,
young,
ew.
Dunder Moose,
Sorry, go ahead.
young. But no, I started writing blogs about like a lot of philosophy and theological stuff,
Hmm.
and publishing these on like forums or whatever, and then I moved into running game blogs, video about video games specifically, and then I eventually started writing for sites like Destructoid, which is like this video game news site,
Okay.
and I did a bit of stuff for Tech Raptor and a couple of others. But I was getting kind of tired of that, because by that point I was moving more away from video games and more into the tabletop space in general. So D&D, I've always run it and played it probably since, I would say, maybe like 94 or 95
Wow.
is when I first
Okay.
discovered
So,
it.
second edition, is that the one that was big then?
Yeah, so second edition was the main one, and but we just would scrape together shit. So we didn't even have like a full set of core books. It was like we'd have
Hmm.
player's handbook, and we'd have something from like the Forgotten Realms, the Horde, a map from that maybe, and it was just whatever hand me down crap we could cobble together. But
Yeah.
enough people were intuitive enough about their understanding of the game that you could make it work and you could run
It seems like
games.
it was a weird time too, because you had a bunch of different versions that were all official, right? Like you had the advanced. Well, I guess by second edition they'd kind of come back together,
I
right?
think they phased that out, but you can still find those things at hobby
Yeah,
shops
yeah.
and whatever. But we were like in a super
DX
small
and
town.
yeah.
So like the only hobby shop that existed was literally a dude that lived across the street from me that would sell like magic cards and comic books and stuff out of his basement with his brother. That
Nice.
was it. Like this town was like 5,000 people. So you just took whatever you could get, and I fell in love with the game, and I fell in love with running it, but I didn't have books to take home and do it myself. So I just started making up games with like six-sided dice,
Right on.
to fill the gaps. And then it was like the early 2000s when D&D 3 released, the third edition, that I
Hmm.
finally got like a full set of books and then was running games with that for
Luxury, a full
whatever.
set.
Oh yeah, it was beautiful, and I hated it. I actually didn't like the game that much at the
Yeah.
time, because I was playing in D&D second edition games, and so a lot of it was just so alien and new. Like I remember hating skills,
Hmm.
because I was like, oh, what a pain. Like I don't know why, and it's not that much different from non-weapon proficiencies, but I just remember hating skills for some reason,
Hmm.
and all the powers and stuff. It felt so like video gamey to me compared to second edition, where I just felt like it was, you're playing a role in this world, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit more loose maybe, and not as like I gotta build up this character and I gotta max them out, or whatever, min max them. So that's kind of how I got into that. And then after, like I said, writing in my 20s, and writing for video game sites, I tried to start like a couple of D&D blogs, but they didn't really go anywhere. And then
Hmm.
I got into a band a few years ago, and we were playing a lot of shows and stuff. And so it was like all over the place. But finally, last year, I decided I'm going to start like a D&D blog, because I'd found somebody's on Substack and I really liked the platform itself.
Yeah.
Because before that, it was like WordPress and Blogger, and I'm like, I hate dealing with WordPress, because I dealt with it in IT and had to like fix people's shitty WordPress sites all the time. I'm like, I don't want to touch WordPress as long as I live. But Substack was really nice. And then I started a blog, and it was like the first couple of weeks, some guy gave me like $80 on there, as like
Wow.
a subscription, and I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I had to go in afterwards and set
You're
it
like, have
up
I
so
got
it would
that
work.
switch done?
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, this is kind of cool. and then it just was one thing after another getting into this space for the video game, but then finding out people were having good conversations on here and they were talking about cool stuff I had never
Yeah.
heard of. So that's kind of gives people, I guess, a bit of a background of what I've been up to
Right
and
on.
why I'm here, you know?
So I've shared before on here my journey where basically pandemic hit. I started playing online with friends that weren't in town. Fifth edition was the big thing. I did watch Critical Role for a while because I thought this is how I'm going to learn how to play these rules. Which I don't know about how good that is because you have to watch a lot
Yeah,
of gameplay before you get little individual answers. Like they didn't play it as a tutorial; they were just playing it. Um,
that's right.
and there was each episode is so stinking long, and there's so many of them. And I got friends that like watch everything, and like they'll make some kind of joke, like somebody said something about pocket bacon, and I'm like, what's that? And they're all like smirking at each other, like he doesn't know about pocket bacon. I'm like, whatever, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
the
can
memes.
call me the lame guy that hasn't watched 14 seasons of whatever. Um,
Yeah.
it just didn't. It doesn't do it for me. I recognize that they are
Sure.
talented. I recognize all of that stuff, but like, I don't know. I anyway, fifth edition just wasn't cutting it for me. It seemed like it was so complex. It was so bloated with all of the subclasses and classes and all of the spells and all the things you could choose, and it seemed like it would be no fun to DM after a while because people would get upset that you wouldn't let them pick their favorite overpowered combo. But it's like I can't read everything and learn everything just so that you have a good shot, you know. So
Yeah.
I just found myself I didn't even know all the rules. I was just running what I thought, and it was not satisfying to me. But that's all my friends wanted to play. And then I started watching Questing Beast, and I started reading 10 Foot Pole's blog, and I started saying, well, maybe the OSR is where it's at. I see all these products that they're like, well, this is amazing. I'm like, this must be where the magic lies. This must be where the old magic that I've heard of. And so I just bought a ton of crap. And
Yes.
no, no,
I'm
and
familiar with that experience too.
yeah, I mean, and I say a ton of crap, but there were some really good modules in there if that's what you're
Yeah.
into. Um, but they're just on my shelf over here. And I mean, I may have grabbed a few ideas. Like the only one that I've run that I know of is the Black Worm of Brandonsford, and that was a good purchase. I enjoyed running my buddies through that.
Yeah.
But I was on X and I started seeing this hashtag BroSR, and I'm like, what is
Yeah.
that? And these guys looked like they were having so much fun. Like they were just making jokes and memes left and right, and they just seemed to be having the time of their lives. And
Yeah.
and so I got curious and started looking into what they were doing, and it seemed like they were honestly playing the game in a way that I had never even occurred to me. And because I'm
Sure.
a Johnny come lately, and because I didn't have my identity wrapped, and I was like, okay, show me what you got. You know, you guys seem like you got something cool going on. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't get any I didn't get any guff or flack or trouble from the bros coming in. But
Yeah.
I got a lot once I put the hashtag up. Once people knew I was hanging out with the bad kids down by the liquor store, right? Like
Yeah.
it got really steady. And there are some people like that's all they wanted. Like it wasn't like we have a few things about gaming in common and oh by the way I disagree with one time or something like that. It was just like all they wanted to talk about was how rotten of a human being I was for trying to play this way. And I had to start
Yeah.
muting.
It's something.
Yeah.
It's
So
something.
did you as you started becoming woven in with this group, did you hit walls? Did you hit periods where they challenged you and made you feel bad about what you'd been doing and you had to think about it and come in, or was it just kind of like me where it was just like easy to get into?
Well, I'll go back to what you said about hanging out by the liquor store, right? And I that's just so familiar to me already. I mean, in school, you know, high school, I was always hanging out with like the bad crowd, right? Like these were the smokers. They'd hang out in
Mm-hmm.
the smoking area and blah blah blah. And then I've been in the last 3 years. I was in the metal community, and because we had a heavy metal band. So I'm
Yeah.
going hanging out at all these bars. So I'm used to hanging out with people that are really outside of the core of what's going
Yeah.
on. And so when because I had the same experience with you, I think when I started meeting bros or talking to them or interacting with them, I saw the humor in it where I think a lot of people don't. They see like, oh, these guy, he's got his head so far up his ass, and they're so self righteous or they're so
Yeah.
arrogant. And I'm like, dude, like they're like some of it might be true, but most of it is like we're playing a bit, we're having fun. Like that's what the internet is for,
Yeah.
right? Like this is the origination of trolling, and that's essentially what these guys are doing part of the time at least. And like it's like people have a blinder to that, like they don't see it, they just take it personally. And so I got like a totally different impression of them. And when I joined, and I don't even like, I think people misunderstand that you don't really join the Bro SR so much
Yeah.
as you just decide you are in the Bro SR. Right? It's not like a secret clubhouse with a secret handshake or one centralized kind of group. Um, there's a lot of different clubhouses within the Bro SR where different
Yeah.
people correlate. So you interact with them and eventually you might get invited to one of these places or something. That's sort of how it worked for me. And so I never really got like a lot of pushback or bullshit from these guys. And I've just gotten along with them naturally, you know. And you get ribbed, like you've
Yeah.
seen me in the Bro XT chat. I'll say something
Yeah.
stupid, and
Yeah.
everyone's like, "Shut up, you retard!" You know, like this is that's normal, but that's normal with guys in general too. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get with the Bro SRs, like. And maybe it just depends on what your background was, but
Yeah.
I'm used to hanging around with guys, and you rip on each other
You
all the
challenge each
time.
other because you want to see if it's a
Yeah,
person you can trust. If they can take it.
sure.
If you call them a name and they laugh it off and give you one right back, then you're like, okay. But like if you
Yeah,
call
and
them a
that's
name and then they get hurt and offended and try to tell on you, it's like, okay, that's who you
yeah,
are.
and that never stops. Like I'm in my late 30s, and all the other guys in my band were all in our late 30s, and
Hmm.
we still act like morons with each other. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're just brutal to each other when we're hanging out and stuff. But that's just how it is, and it's part of the. I don't know. It has something to do with being a guy. I think I
Yeah.
don't know how to typify it, and I don't try that much anymore. I used to try and analyze these things a little bit. Um,
We
but
got a
that's how the
super
bros
chat.
just operate.
We got a super chat from my ear trumpet has been struck by lightning. Thanks for the $5, bro. I'm not gonna sing that because I'm not a good singer. Maybe I should have Joel sing it. The lyrics to "Bad Company." I think he's identifying with what you're saying about your background there, man.
Yeah, I'm not going to sing it using the original tune, but I'll say "Bad Company," and I can't deny bad company till the day I die. Till the day I
No,
die.
I can't beatbox. I
That's
know.
all they're going to get from us. That's all you get from us for your $5. If you'd sent $10, we'd sing the whole song.
That's right. I'll let you sing. I don't even know the words,
Yeah.
but yeah. And Bradford Walker says the bros act like men, and that is telling to those that don't get it. So, I mean, there is a kind of a masculine ethos to it that, to me, was attractive, and I can see why maybe it's off-putting to others. But the kind of person that is off-putting to is the kind that they can play with other tables. Is that putting it
Yeah.
too mildly?
No, I want them to, because part of my experience and why I've never liked being a player is every time I would go to play with some group publicly, it was the worst experience.
Hmm.
Like I remember going to a place in town here called the Century Box and playing fourth edition with a bunch of like really dweeby guys, you know, and it was just like so miserable. It was like, well, I get the magic. I should get that magic item because I am the cleric, and it's actually only the clerics can use that item, and blah 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 blah. And it was like, we're here for 4 hours. It's a friggin' one shot, and we're at the end of the game. Like we just beat the boss, It's like, who cares about this?
Yeah.
And so I never went back, and I never played fourth edition again. And that's when I got into the OSR as well.
Hmm.
And for me, it started with Osric and Dungeon Crawl Classics. Those are the ones
Okay.
that I picked up on. And then I ran Dungeon Crawl Classics for a while, and I still love that game. I just hate flipping through the textbook every single time someone casts any kind of spell. That's my only
It is
problem.
huge, and
But
most of it are spells.
yeah,
I've run half of Sailors on a Starless Sea twice. I've gotten two groups
yeah,
halfway through, and then we never went back to it. So
which is a
I don't
great
know what.
module if you ran it with something else. Like that's my favorite little module that I've ever run is Sailors on the Starless Sea.
It's very
It's so much
visceral.
fun.
It's got
It
some
is.
really squeamish, like where I don't want to do spoilers, but there is a place where there's a frozen person who has a giant weapon, and if they want the weapon, they have to like snap his frozen fingers off to get it out of his hands. And I just remember that detail just being like,
Well, it
um,
starts out like so innocuous. I think the first thing you run into is like some deadly plants. And then
yeah,
by the end, you're like in this undersea cult that you have to deal with
yeah.
and these
Everyone's been
horrible
mutated from
monsters.
going down the well, and yeah,
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a
it's a good
journey like
module.
that.
It's a good
Just
module.
that one module.
And it was the first my first experience with those funnels, and like I gotta say I enjoy like just you get well I mean think about it, a funnel you get 4 level 0 guys, so that's already
Yeah.
playing on the I'm running a stable of characters instead of this is my one main character. Hey Crafty Matt, how's it going, bro? um so okay, so we both had that kind of experience where maybe we didn't have it so easy getting into the bros, but when we were challenged, we didn't take it personally and we didn't like grab our dice and go home. We just laughed it off and
Yeah.
kept going. Maybe we had the same experience as other people did. We just were different in the way that we responded to it. I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting.
Maybe it's an age thing though. Like
Hmm.
we're I don't know, how old are you,
I'm
Duncan?
47.
47. I'm 39. You
Ew,
know, we're not spring chickens.
that's right.
We've been through it. We've seen a little bit of life, and I think that if
Yeah,
that is true for you, then you can take more of this kind of heat, especially if you know where it's coming from, right?
yeah. Yeah, and
So
it's
you're
like
a little bit
if someone
younger.
doesn't think I'm the best at D&D, like, okay.
Oh yeah, well, oh no,
No, you don't understand. I am the best.
yeah. We can argue about that for weeks if you're on X, who's the best, right? Because everybody wants to be the best, I guess. It's like all I want to do is run some games. I don't give a shit if I'm the best. If I'm not losing players, that's enough, you know?
I gotta say, like the thing that I'm in it for, I know like Black Lodge Games is in it for that immersion and for that like moment where they feel what their character would feel. The it's almost like being a writer that doesn't like writing, but I
Yeah.
enjoy having written. My favorite thing in the world is if I'm hanging out with a bunch of other guys that play and my stories beat the brakes off of anybody else's stories at the water cooler. When they hear what happened and they're like, "That's insane. What?" Like
Yeah.
I will lose a character for those moments. I will have a TPK whatever. Like if my guy dies and it's hilarious, that's gold to me. You know
For
what I
sure.
mean? Um
Yeah, absolutely.
so I feel like this style of play sets up stuff like that like you wouldn't believe. Obviously, Railroad, you're not going to have any experience that the DM hasn't prepared for you. And if you do,
Yeah,
he's going to resent it. He's going to be like, why you keep going off the tracks? Why you keep trying to be a player? Um,
sure. Yeah.
Stuff where you're dealing with multiple creative people all coming up with their own craziness in a sandbox. It's lightning in a bottle. Anyway,
It
um,
is like my Dungeon Crawl Classics game that I ran a few years ago. It was always amazing to me the little stories that would develop, like without me manufacturing them
mhm.
or driving players in any direction, because I have this probably really horrible tendency where I don't really prep. Like I'll have a little area, a map in mind, but I like to do things on the fly where it's like, okay, what monster is there? You flip open the book, stop at a certain page, that's what you're fighting now. And if that means I
Yeah,
have to adjust stats or whatever so it doesn't like murder everybody or gives them at least some kind of a chance, sometimes I'll do that, sometimes I won't. Sometimes it's just that's what you're dealing with. And if you don't want to deal with it, get the hell out of there,
Yeah.
because that
Just
can be
run.
its own story too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
So
yeah, and they'll get mad at the thing they had to run from, and they're like, "All right, we got to find a way to go back and get even with that guy or that T-Rex or whatever
sure.
it was." Right?
And it might not always be, well, let's hit it with our sword till it dies. It might be something more complicated. Maybe you got to go find some ritual magic spell to seal it away in the nether realm or whatever. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But the point is that when you guys are at the end of the story, I don't like to be in the position where I'm the DM that's going, so what did everybody think? And do you have fun? You know, wasn't that neat when I made you
Did
do
I
that?
produce the fun that you required with the story that I
Yeah.
wrote for tonight? You are
Did I
all
create
welcome.
fun?
Yeah.
I like it more when we're talking about it together, like we all kind of experienced it together. Where I'm
Yeah.
like, "Holy shit, I didn't know that that was going to happen," right? And it's like writing stories also has a similar feeling. Like I'm sure you've heard it expressed by writers where they're like, "Well, I didn't know my main character was going to go in that direction," and it sounds kind of silly when people say it out loud, but I do find that's what happens a lot. Like I'm back into story writing now, after not having done it for a long time. I used to write horror shorts and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
for Procyon Frequency, and every now and then, I'll message my business partner and be like, "Oh man, I had this idea. Like, I think that they're gonna do this." And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I think I'm going to make them do this, but like this is what these characters would logically do maybe in this situation. And
Yeah.
just based on what I know about them or what I've developed about them already, that's the direction that they're probably going to go. And so I feel like D&D has its own very different way of doing that if you think on your feet and you open up opportunities. It's like that's why I don't like making, as they call, the big bad end guy, which
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that sounds so juvenile in a way too. Like to say the big bad end guy,
Yeah.
boy, it's like Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
For, for me, it's more like, well, there's gangs of bad things, and they probably have a boss, right? They probably
Mm-hmm.
respond to somebody and listen to somebody, and so let's put those in the world, and they can either sink or swim on their own dice rolls,
Yeah.
basically. And so we have had faction bad guys that turn into these big bad end guys just by natural course of play. And then players sort of develop hatred for them on their own, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh man, we didn't get him last time and he got one of our guys.
But like the orphan kid wearing rags that pickpockets them in the town square, that will become the BBEG of that session, right? They're like, oh, that
Right.
little crap, we got to get him, we got to nail him. He stole, 8
Yeah.
silver from me, and it's like, okay, well, Sauron can wait because we're gonna sort that little cretin out.
Yeah, and those things are almost more interesting in a way because when I think so many people's perception of D&D is we are going to be fighting a dark lord that is going to be summoning a Tarask or whatever, because you've seen this trope like so many times over and over
Yeah,
again that no one expects, like the orphan boy. That's like the villain of the story now, right?
yeah,
And it's not because the DM made that happen. It's because you failed your dice rolls. He got away with like your best magic item, and he locked himself in a dungeon somewhere. We got to go find him. We got to go through all this crap to find him now, or
yeah,
whatever. These are the way. Like this is the way that I really like D&D games running, because it just does create these natural things people want to talk about. And the best one to me was one of my players, Becca, that's in my current game. She was also in that same Dungeon Crawl Classics game a few years ago.
okay,
And I had some sort of throwaway NPC that they ran into in a forest that was just there to give them a piece of information. But they're like, well, let's bring him with us. And so he became sort of a hireling of theirs. And then this gang leader guy that they were always fighting against or running into, because they were all sort of like bounty hunters and they kept like butting heads, right?
yeah,
And that other group would interrupt their plans all the time, and they ended up killing him in a combat. And then so she was like, she had taken a liking to the NPC and didn't want him to die,
yeah,
and so she took that personally. And now it was like they ran into them in some dungeon, and I had like some really dangerous portal. It was like the implication was that it was powered by like nuclear energy or something,
okay,
and you'd go through it to somewhere else. But they're all standing outside the portal, the two groups, and she's just like, ah, screw it. I'm going to throw a fireball at the portal. And I was like, pardon me? Right. And so we had this round table where, and I'm rolling dice. Like at this point, I didn't have a camera. So I'm doing it through Discord with like a little dice roller app or whatever. And I would roll right in front of them, right? So they could see all the results and everything. And so she throws this fireball at this portal. It explodes, of course. And every single person in the room has to do a death save. And the entire party succeeds in their death save. And all the villains fail their death saves. And everybody takes fatal damage except for him, but he's like knocked almost unconscious. He's at like negative 2 HP or whatever. Everyone else is like negative 10 at this point. And so she goes up and I can't remember his name. Dirk. It was Dirk. The NPC's name was Dirk. Okay. And she goes up. She's like, I walk up to him and I put my knife to his neck and I say, this is for Dirk, you son of a bitch. And I slash his throat and she kills him. And now she always tells that story to this day of this like awesome thing.
They never brag about the story moments you set up. They never brag about the characters that you tried to make so interesting. Their favorite thing as a player is when you as a DM, when your eyebrows shoot up and you go, what? Like they love it when they do something that like wrecks your plan so completely that like they see the wheels turning while you're like, okay, what does this mean? What do I have to do now? Those are the legendary moments. And when you realize that, when you recognize that, if the goal, like me, is to have better stories than anyone else, then the goal as a DM is to provide a situation where those stories can naturally happen.
Yeah.
And absolutely. You don't want to say, did you guys like it? You want to hear them gush to their friends later about what their character did, what they did that was unexpected and powerful or stupid or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And they're never going to tell you if they like it, or if they do, they're never going to be honest about it. Because they're not going to want to hurt your feelings. They'll be like, yeah, it was great. And then you just never see them show up again.
It's like asking your mom what she thinks of the short story you wrote.
That's great. I loved it. Right? It's like, of course, that's the response you're going to get. These people are your friends.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if we were playing in a game together, the bros, we might be like, dude, that friggin' sucked and you're a loser. Get better. But like, that's a rare situation for the most part, right?
Folder Bloat says the reason players want those moments is because if the referee is stunned by your actions, you are 100% free and autonomous. You are outside the enclosure if there was one. And that's exactly right, 100%. Folder Bloat. And that is the thing that tabletop role-playing games can offer that nothing else can. Nothing else.
Well, imagine if...
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, imagine if I had instead said, no, you can't blow up the portal. The fireball goes through the portal and nothing happens.
That would wreck Act 3.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, now we don't have a story, right? Because the generic...
Good job. You ruined the novel.
Yeah. A folder boat is like 100% right. It's like when you're surprised and you're like, gee, I don't know what's going to happen now. I have to roll on that and we have to find out together if you die or not.
Yeah.
And then if you survive that, that's huge, right?
And as a DM, I like being surprised. I like it when something that I didn't see coming happens. And I like to laugh with them when something hilarious arises out of the natural situations. Right on. So, okay.
D&D's great. Dunder, D&D's great game.
D&D is great, and when you have played it in a way that beats your earlier experiences with it, then you just know. Like, I recently watched a Questing Beast video, and he was at a conference, and he was interviewing a bunch of D&D YouTubers, and they were answering viewer questions, which I thought was brilliant. And more than one of them said, when they said, what have you learned? How have you changed in your approach to the game? A lot of them said, I used to be railroady and now I'm sandboxy. And it seems like that's a natural progression to go from wanting to run people through your own story to just wanting to see what happens when these crazy characters get together. And the next step to that, the next evolution, once you've already made that jump and you're like, this is a better way to play than that, you don't have a problem telling railroad players that they're not experiencing the best the game has to offer. You don't have a problem saying to them, there is a better way to play that's more enjoyable. That doesn't mean they're
Yeah,
not enjoying the way they play it, but you just know deep down in your bones because you've tried both and you find one to be superior. So now take it another step from what most people are doing in their sandboxy old school games and then throw in these ideas that Jeff Rowe is bringing out. And I don't
sure.
care
Yeah,
if he originally created something new or if he brought back something that was forgotten or if he's just saying something that everybody's always done but nobody bothered to tell me about. It's the same result for me either way. It was as big of a jump as going from railroad to sandbox as it was from going to conventional play sandbox to one time and the steens and all of it. It solves
yeah.
problems that we couldn't even put our finger on. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to let go of that just because he made other people feel bad, right? I hate it for you. I'm sad if somebody made you feel like you weren't playing as well as they were. But like if you've played both ways and you know in your heart which one's the best for you, you shouldn't have any problem saying, "Okay, well that's how you like to do it. Here's the best for me." But
Yeah,
it's the what if they're right? What if I've spent 40 years and I haven't had the best experience? It takes a humility to admit that to yourself. That there
it
could have been
does.
a
And
better way that was in the rules all along, that we all just read it and said, that's too much work. And we dismissed what we didn't know were load bearing rules.
well, when you're playing a game where you're essentially acting as God for the most part, like how many DMs do you think are really humble in the first place? You know, they're so used to controlling things, and especially if they're a railroady type of DM. Because I was thinking about that too, and I was thinking about what is the Bro SR and what are these ideas, and essentially it boils down to some of these ideas are old, some of them are either new or they're old new in that they've taken an old idea and we're expanding on it like
Yeah.
Bronstein. It started somewhere and now it's getting it's moving in so many different directions and people are experimenting with it and they're improving upon what was essentially a pretty static mode of play that's being played by very few people
Yeah.
over the last number of decades. And so when you get those ideas in the open source, it's just like coding, to use that analogy.
Yeah.
Like people do all kinds of crazy things you would never expect with it because everybody's different in their approach and everybody's different in their level of experience and their level of knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. It's like
Yeah.
what Harmony Ginger's doing with the Godstein and everything.
Yeah.
So to me, all the Bro SR it's like, it's an experimentation group essentially of let's keep finding new things and let's keep exploring new avenues of play to evolve D&D because according to some people D&D has not evolved apart from people sort of being wishy-washy and changing their minds. It's like,
Yeah.
let's move to sandbox, well that's not working out, let's move back to narrative play. And it's just sort of like lateral steps for a really long time. And so to me, the Bro SR is all about like, let's find what this game can be. Let's really like mine it for everything it's
Yeah.
worth, and not be shy about trying new things with it.
Yeah.
And experimenting with them. And if they don't, and sometimes they don't work, and then you say, okay, well that sucks. Throw it out. It didn't work. Or you take it from another angle and take it from another approach, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Bro SR really just boils down to it's a literary club. It's a
Yeah.
literary group
That's what Folder
based on
just said in
Appendix
the chat.
N.
He said the Bros are is actually a book club.
Yeah, it is like an adult literary club, and it is a wargaming clubhouse of sorts, or a collection of them maybe, where the aim is to get the game on the table as much as possible and
Yeah.
try new ideas, because the theory crafting and talking about what might happen and what could have been and what should have been, that doesn't do anything. You have to test these things,
That's what we
right?
learned
And
from picking back one E back up and saying let's play all the rules, even the ones that don't make sense. Um,
yeah,
because you cannot theory craft your way around the second and third order effects of following a rule. Like
right.
John McGowan has a book on the Living Campaign, and he talks about how encumbrance rules lead to building domains. That it's
Yeah.
if you take out encumbrance and you ignore coin weight, you'll never build a castle in your game. And nobody could have
Right.
guessed that until we started playing with that stuff and figuring out what it led to. Man, the chat has been on fire. Let me see if I can catch up with some of these comments that are coming in.
They
Folder
better be
says,
good guys.
bros walk away from weekly game night with new stories that clobber anything from conventional play. Never mind the Bronsteins. Um, Crafty Matt has a funny story where the party's what they're really up against is a homeowners association they're working with the dragon because people aren't painting their house green. um, Again, with Folder's comment about the autonomy and the freedom you feel as a player, and when you realize, the impact you can have on the game world. And a Folder again with once you play with total player autonomy, one-to-one time PvP, etc., you can never go back. It's simply too superior that the mind cannot grapple with the linear Mother May I stuff. Do you want to unpack that a little bit? What do you think he means by Mother May I?
Mother may I. Let me read his comment so I can process a little. It's
Yeah,
in
there's
Conspirator
kind of a lot of
Online.
buzzwords in there if you're not down with the lingo.
Yeah. Um, my
The
way of
first,
interpreting
okay, go ahead.
Folder's lingo, I would say that once you get into these concepts and you realize how alive it makes your game and your game world to the point where people want to interact with it and they're interested in it when you're not playing,
Yeah,
it's like you've discovered a different game entirely, like a different hobby almost entirely. And going back, it's like going back from playing advanced squad leader and then going and playing checkers afterwards. Right? It's just like, well, this is so simple that I can't get much out of it anymore. Right? It's like I've done it all. I've seen it
yeah.
all. And then you watch like YouTubers that are still talking about conventional play and arguing about it, and it just feels like this circular, pointless roulette that's constantly happening. It's like I don't even feel like engaged in that anymore.
And their channels
You
are
know?
dying. Their channels are dying because everybody that was going to learn how to play 5e conventional style DMing they've learned. And
Yeah. What's there to talk about at this
yeah,
point? You know? It's like
um,
bards are gay now. Maybe we could talk about that for 3 hours,
just
right?
importing culture war because they don't have a good game to talk about. Um,
That's right. Yeah.
the first word that I heard using the word Mother May I was John Mollison on The Joy of Wargaming and referring to is the real game acting out what your character would do, throwing yourself against the environment and trying to come away with treasure and experience? Or is it trying to guess what the DM wants you to do? And if you guess it right, then you get a cookie. I think that's what the
Yeah.
Mother May I means.
Yeah. You get a pat on the back, like in a literal sense in these new games too, where it's like, you get an advantage point because you're so good. You're such a good boy. Here's an O. Henry, like a mini O. Henry, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like, I've always found that so condescending in a sense to just like hand out these little, to me, it
Dude,
goes back to the compulsion loop of video games,
yeah.
right? Where it's like Diablo, where it's like you're constantly getting rewarded and it suckers you into keeping on playing, even though it's maybe like kind of a shallow experience. You're like, I got to get that legendary. Oh, another yellow thing popped up on
It
my
has a
screen.
psychological barb that hooks you in. Um,
Yeah. And it's like, it's so exploitative, it's so manipulative in a way.
Bradford Walker says, what I anticipated would be great to see play out, and now have seen it and confirmed that it is, having one group of players, without trying, wreck the plans of one or more others. That is
Yes.
fascinating. And to see them get frustrated at each other and start scheming against the other teams and the other players, that you would think that would be off-putting. If you talk to a conventional guy about PvP, just watch them roll their eyes and just
Oh
watch them
yeah. Have a
cringe
heart
away from
attack.
it because yeah, if that's your mindset, PvP is disastrous for
Yeah.
getting to the next point in the story. Right? It is even worse than the
100%.
players that get interested in the wrong NPC, right? It's the players grabbing the wheel away from the DM.
It reminds
However,
me
if
of
you
there's a documentary, the D&D Experience, and I think it was Stefan Picorni was on there, and I love this part where he starts talking about that. He's like, I don't know why what happened where they'd get to third level and everybody would just start killing each other. All these characters just ended up killing each other, and it's like, well, and Stephen McCorney, like this is the guy that will map every room in a building and stuff like that. And I love his
Yeah.
work. I'm not trying to bash him because I think he's an interesting character. But it's like, yeah, that's kind of what happens. Like if you let your players be kind of roguish and go against each other, but you're running like a narrative story driven game, it's going to get screwed up, So of course you're going to be pissed off when it's over.
Bradford also says that Bronstein alone got so many to go mask off and reveal that they are suck players or don't play is a coup. So I've been thinking about this Bronstein thing. The bros like to use the term Bronstein. My friend Griff says you're misapplying the term. That the Bronstein is a separate thing that kind of morphed into what we call D&D, or what his term for it is Proto Blackmore. And I was kind of like, I see what one side is saying, I see what the other side is saying. I was fortunate enough to have Robert J. Kuntz on this show, and I got to talk to him and hear some of his perspectives. And the dude was awesome, even though he's in Corsica, France, and it was midnight. Even after I ended the show, he stayed on and talked to me for a while longer. And I think I'm changing my mind about calling it a Bronstein, because the things that we did last year and the things that are happening now, they do seem extra and beyond. They seem new. We took old principles, but like you said, we're experimenting. We're pushing the envelope. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm starting to agree with Griff that like Bronstein is its own thing. I don't know. I go back and forth because the English language is malleable and you can use a one subset, or one thing as, like Band-Aid or Kleenex instead of tissues and stuff. So I start to understand the forces of that happening. But I have still not played Bronstein or Banania or whatever. I would consider Banania as a type of Bronstein. That's how I think about it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't know if either of those things is similar to what happens when you take a bunch of ongoing characters from an ongoing campaign and make patrons out of the NPCs and have a night where you flip the table, or the kind of things that the BroSR is talking about right now that we haven't started doing yet, but is like very much in the current time zeitgeist of having using the deities from Deities and Demigods and having a Bronstein that impacts multiple tables that are all connected with one-to-one timing. And that's where it goes back to those wargaming roots of Featherstone and Bath and these clubs that were playing war games, and they would send, their troops down to another club and have people, okay, you've got this many winged hussars or whatever, and they're going to be raiding, and you play it out and tell us what happened, and then we'll pick the narrative thread back up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's new or something else. I don't know. I feel like we need a BroSR term for the BroSR things that we're doing, so that it's not confused with the stuff that happened before. That was amazing. That was awesome. That was seminal, but that we may have gone beyond.
My impression when they put out Broser was that was supposed to be the replacement term. But instead, I guess it was just Broser. That was the title of that particular game. So, I don't know what
don't
you
call it a Broser. That's a single specific game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the waters are so muddied now.
They are. They are.
But because it's not just Fog of War. That is definitely one element of it. So you can't really just call it D&D with Fog of War. You can't call it D and Dinner Theater because nobody's eating dinner and nobody's in costumes, as far as I know. So I don't know what the hell you call it. It's like I've always just gone back to. I like the idea of OD&D being called, medieval fantasy war game.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I don't know if that doesn't encapsulate it either, but to me, just the fact that D&D used to have that subtitle in general, opens the door open for more of these kind of war gamey elements to come back into Dungeons and Dragons
And
for
it
role
should
playing.
end the argument for people that roll their eyes and say D&D isn't a war game. You're not just playing BattleTech, right? Because story gamers will
Yeah,
use that. They'll say it's not a war game, and it's like, oh, I hate to break it to you, but you know,
that's like literally it's in the
here
original.
is the first book in the original D&D, and it says rules for fantastic medieval war games campaigns playable with paper and pencil and miniature figures. So I don't know what to tell you.
You're wrong. We have the
Yeah,
proof right here on camera.
got the proof. So yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm kind of in a weird middle ground where I don't want to honk off the bros. I don't want to honk off my friends on the other side. I can be buddies with people that don't like each other. I
Let's
won't
do
tell
it.
them
Make
who
them
to be
all
friends
mad.
with, um, but I do
Let's
think
do it
just
right here on the channel tonight, Dunder.
dude,
Let's piss them all
all feelings aside, all copyright and trademark infringement and all that kind of stuff aside, just for the accuracy of language, I feel like what I saw in 2024, I don't think there's anybody. How do I don't want to overstate this. There may have been people that were doing this back then, but they weren't thinking about it the way we were. They weren't applying it
No.
to D&D in the way that we are. I think it's something else. I've just taken to calling it Steens just for a couple reasons because I still know what that means, and I don't want to burn any bridges with people that do get particular about the word.
That's part
Right.
of
So
the
I might be burning
vernacular,
bridges
whether we
right now,
want to.
even by admitting this, but I'm just kind of I'm a verbal processor. This is how I'm thinking about it. Um,
Sure. Well,
so
and it's like the one of the projects that I'm working on in my free time is Cosmic Debris, which I'm calling that, a role playing war game.
yeah,
And really, because it's like I'm taking the things I like out of war games and board games, and I'm meshing those with the freedom and the flexibility of role playing. But those Steen elements are also a part of it. The fog
yeah,
of war, secret orders, that sort of thing.
yes,
And so it's like, trying to properly brand it. I don't think you have to be like ultra unique in it, but it should cover enough of the bases. So to say like role playing war game, it's like, okay, that's enough. I don't
hmm
have to elaborate and have a 13 paragraph subtitle on the front of the cover or whatever it's going to be. So
Jeffro's superpower is he can take a game that everybody's happy with, and he can figure out what the problem with it is. He can put his
yeah,
finger right on where it could be better, and then I don't know how he does it, but he always seems to come up with something that solves it and just takes the game into a whole new dimension. And you could say, oh, well,
yes,
he's not inventing anything. He's whatever. For my game as a person, Jeff Rowe's genius revolutionized the way that I play and the way that I think about this game and the kind of experiences I've had. And
yeah,
and he's always doing that. Everyone will get happy with where it is, and then he'll be like, "Well, what about this thing happening over here?" And he'll go to fix that. And sometimes even the bros have a hard time keeping up with him. I've just found, and like sometimes it's rubbed me the wrong way too. I've been in games that he's running where I'm like, I feel like I should be able to do this if we're doing complete player autonomy, right? But when I think about it, I'm like, you know what? I've trusted his gut every time before, and it's always been amazing. I'm just gonna pipe down and see where this goes, and I've never been disappointed. So, to me,
yeah.
that's worth a lot of hurt feelings on Twitter. To me, that's worth a lot of people that are going to tell me that I'm a bad person for following along because the dude, he's just got a gift for this stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
um,
he's well read and he's analytical about these things. And Jeffro has had obviously a life outside of I sit there and play video games and Dungeons and Dragons 24 hours a day. Like he's a worldly guy too,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So that makes a
I'm not
big
saying he's
difference.
perfect. I mean, he definitely brings the heat on himself sometimes with the way that he acts.
Oh,
But
you know what? He I think he how do I put this? He's a big boy. He can defend himself.
right.
And because I've had people come at me like, why are you defending him for saying? I was like, I'm not defending anybody, but if he
Mhm.
doesn't want to clear this up with people, that's his prerogative.
Yeah,
You're assuming he wants to clear his name.
yeah.
Like that's your problem. That's
He's
your
okay. He's
He's
okay with everyone
perfectly
being mad at
fine.
him. Yeah.
Right, or at least to some degree. I think that when he gets maybe not upset, but what the thing he has a problem with more, and I'm trying to put this the right way, is when you take his ideas and sort of misunderstand what he's trying to say about those, or
Which
that
is
like you
easy to
attack
do,
him,
right? It's easy
which
to
is
not be all the way caught up with him, and he will juke.
yeah,
And he is not afraid to toss out something that he has committed to and even defended to say, well, what if
yeah,
this leads to a better game? And I think that's the difference. Is like outside the Broasar, it just seems like we kind of lock shields and
yeah,
close ranks. But
yeah,
inside, it is a wildly investigative, if that's a word. It is. It is. It is powerful experimentation, and
yeah,
the problem is once you find something, you got to boost it, and that on X doesn't always work as far as with weasel words and conditions because people are always looking for an out. So I don't know.
sure,
It's an interesting place to be in. I
yeah,
would rather learn from people, and I've got a lot to learn from both sides. Like I'm learning a lot from
oh
Griff.
sure.
I learned a lot from Rob. So I don't think there's one source of enlightenment on this. Um, I'm wise enough to know that I don't know enough. So I'm like, if
You
someone wants
have
to
to be.
educate me, yeah,
Yeah, and you have to be for everything you do, especially creative things. D&D is a creative process. If you are shutting down and just saying, "Oh, I know enough and I'm the best," and that you've screwed yourself already. You've shot yourself in the foot,
yeah,
and that goes with everything I've ever done. And I think like that's the only reason my writing improved was I started getting more of a following and I started getting more criticism.
mm-hmm,
And you can either take that criticism and cry about it, or you can take it and say, you know what, maybe there's something to it. There may be some sour grapes or some people that are just jerks or whatever, but
yeah,
there's almost always a little bit of truth in what some people are saying. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
If you can, and so it really pays to be your own worst critic in a sense.
yeah,
But you also move a lot faster when you're surrounded by people that have different experiences and are maybe superior to you in some of those experiences, as the bros are with, say, like their appendix N knowledge and stuff
yes,
like that. Right? I'm behind on that. I'm an H.P. Lovecraft, Tolkien, and Howard guy all the way, but past that, a lot of this stuff is really new to me. And so you have to concede at a certain point and say, you know what, I really don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to putting it in the context of that, and that's
yeah,
going to be a long road, and I got to be okay with that. I got to be okay with this being a learning process, because maybe it's like something about getting old, but I guess when you're 39 you're like, oh, I got to learn a new thing now, like
yeah.
I've already learned so many things.
But if you
but
don't, you
but it
run the risk of getting out over your skis, and it's easier to be a
yes,
young man who does that than it is to be old and gross like we are. Um,
yeah, for sure.
so Procyon Frequency is the video game,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Cosmic Debris was at first anyway loosely related to it. Yeah.
yeah. So I can break those things down. So Procyon Frequency is a video game that we started developing in the late spring of 2024. And it started, I kind of hinted earlier that we had developed a board game, we had prototyped it, but we shelved it for financial reasons. We just didn't want
Hmm.
to dump 30 grand into something that we weren't going to make a return on. When you're
Yeah.
new developers, like Kickstarter doesn't really work most of the time. So it just felt like a bad risk to take. But we both have talents digitally speaking. So, I compose music and I'm a writer, obviously. And then
Yeah.
my co director, Clayton, he's a coder, or a really brilliant coder. And
Okay.
he's also really good. He's good in learning, like he's doing 3D modeling and UI stuff
Oh wow. Okay.
and all these other things. So we thought if we do a project like that, we can close the gaps that each other has, and we can make it a 2-man thing. We can do it for like minimal cost and put that out, and see if people will buy that first, and then we can do more ambitious things.
Yeah.
Kind of later on. And it started really as a hobby where we were playing a lot of the Urquan Masters, It's also known as Star Control 2. It's a game that was really popular in the 90s.
Harmony
And
Ginger also loves the Star Control series.
yeah, Harmony Ginger's a fan of Star Control. We've talked about it quite a bit. And I've been a fan of it forever. And when our company Mycelium first started, one of the first things I did was go to the creators of Star Control because I wanted to call it Juffo Wup Games, which is based on one of their alien races. And I just thought it was a fun
Was
name. It
it
came to my
so? Did
head.
you already know those guys from the other things you'd been doing, or was it like, did you have? How did you get access to the creators?
I just approached them. They are releasing a game, I believe, this year called Free Stars Children of Infinity, which is a direct follow up to Star Control 2.
Oh wow,
So
okay,
it's actually their own sequel to Star Control 2. Like these guys, Paul and Fred, they've been in the industry forever. And they did Star Control 1 and 2, and then they went and did the Skylanders
oh
series,
yeah,
and they did a whole bunch of other games in that time. But then they decided they wanted to finally follow up and sort of finish the story or continue the story of the Star Control series.
okay,
So they went through a bunch of licensing crap with
yeah,
Stardock, who currently owns the Star Control IP. And that was a huge legal battle. And it was Fred that said to me, he's like, you know what, man? He goes, any other time, I would totally be cool with you using that. And I'm not saying you can't use it, but I am saying that we just got out of like a 4-year legal battle and we just
yeah.
never want to have to
You don't
deal
want
with
to
that
borrow
again.
trouble. Yeah,
Yeah, it was like such a tremendous waste of money and time for everybody, right? And so we ended up going with mycelium because it's still related to mushrooms and we have some fascination with mushrooms.
yeah.
Um,
It's part of the origin story,
both it's part of the origin story. I won't get into it here, but
right?
where it kind of went from there was let's make a prototype so we can play Star Control online with each other because we were really enjoying doing that leisurely with Star Control 2. But
Mm-hmm.
we could have more obstacles and stuff in the play field because all that really exists in Star Control 2's maps is like little planets you can bump into and swing around, and then
Yeah.
asteroids. We thought it'd be cool if there's like quasars or suns or like maybe some alien worm that chases you through space, like in,
Mm-hmm.
Empire Strikes Back or something. And then once he pulled out Unreal Engine and did a prototype of that, and we played it and we really liked it. And then he said, well, and then we kind of said, well, why don't we just do this as a full game? And we'll do it as like we'll start out as we'll do it set up as the same way as Urquan Masters, where you have like a full campaign where you're exploring a galaxy full of star systems,
Mm-hmm.
meet different aliens, communicate with them to try and build up a fleet of ships, and then go and fight some big bad guy kind of at the end.
Cool.
And so we've just been rolling with it since. So right
So
now we're at this. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that seems like a lot of work, just in and of itself.
Yeah,
Like that one hobby
yeah,
could take over,
it's
and yet
tremendous. Yeah,
you've also got cosmic debris. You're in the BROXT where you're getting assignments every week,
yeah,
reading and
yeah,
writing and running steens, running
yeah,
Bronsteins. You have a YouTube channel. You have a
yeah.
Substack. So it's fair to
Yes,
say that you have a lot of stuff, a lot of creative things going on. So
I do, and yeah.
my question is, how do you handle like the burnout that can come from that?
Um,
Because
I find the best
honestly,
way.
I've been bumping into that. I've got a YouTube channel. I've been playing these games. Work is getting crazy. I have a side hustle. I got elected as a deacon at my church, and like
Oh
sometimes
wow,
I can have ideas for things that I'm like, oh, I should make a video about this, or I want to explore a rule set about this, and I just don't have any spoons left. When I get home from work, there I just take a nap on the couch while my kids watch Netflix, and
sure,
so I'm wondering, like, I'm seeing a guy who's got a lot going on, and you seem to be
yeah.
on top of it, unless you're just like given a rosy picture. So, what kind of things do you do to protect your creative energies? How do you recharge? How do you keep it all going, bro?
The way that we kind of deal with this, and part of this, a lot of this is specifically related to mycelium, is me and Clayton and I talk almost all day long at this point because that's sort of how we work together. But we will very openly tell each other, like, "Hey, I need a few days away from this," and
Yeah.
it's usually so I can go and put more focus into that. right? So I don't really stop doing stuff because I like doing these things. I enjoy them. But
Hmm.
I try to focus on whatever is working for me best at that time that I'm the most motivated to do. So sometimes I wake up and it's like I don't really feel like making a video. And so that's why my YouTube videos are pretty sporadic, is because they're kind of the least interesting thing for me to do, and so I only do them every now and then when I really feel like doing them, you
Yeah.
know. And writing I've done every day since I was probably 15, so I'm just used to that.
Right
And
on.
I write so fast that most of the time a lot of these things are trivial. Some of the longer pieces I've done on Substack, those I'll spend more time on, and then I'll polish them up and edit them. But
Yeah.
if it's like, 2,000 words or something, I can pump that out in 20 minutes and do a quick scan and publish it. There you go. It's not that much not that much work at one time.
Yeah.
But specifically for Procyon Frequency, since it is so creative, because we wear different hats, I will tend to hop around between things.
Hmm.
So, like, sometimes I'll sit down with my notepad and draw shitty sketches of spaceships for the game or aliens and what they should look like. And then I might move from that and do story stuff. And then I might move away from that and compose some music. So I kind of try to do it that way, where rather than just stopping full stop for like a week or 2 weeks or whatever, you just move on to the something that seems a little more pleasant, because maybe you're getting just burned out on doing that one thing too
Yeah.
much, right? And so that's how I try to manage it.
And so what is the value of having a business partner in protecting those creative energies? Like, how was that helped out
It's
for you?
really huge because Clayton and I are both the kinds of people where if we weren't motivating each other or kind of pulling each other out of the muck, we
Hmm.
would tend to let projects slide, you know. And with Procyon, we're both really passionate about it, but we both do get our times where we just feel like it's overwhelming or we're burned out. And it's always just a conversation away to kind of say, "Hey man, what's up?" and
Yeah. Kind of
get each other
recenter.
excited about it again. So I think, like, it's not just having a business partner, but it's having the right business partner. And we are like best, we're really tight. We're best friends. And we're not just best friends in terms of doing the projects together, but we have a similar sense of humor.
That's
And so
good.
we tend to joke and laugh a lot. And I think that's really important too. Even when we
Hmm.
do like a meeting, we very rarely had a serious meeting. Like, we'll always talk about the serious stuff, and then it always just devolves into nonsense at some point, as long as we get the serious stuff out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you got to find the right people to work with. And I've always had, I haven't had, it's not that I've had trouble doing it, but I can tell right away when I'm not going to work well with somebody, and
Mm.
very specifically through music. So the drummer in the band that I was in previously, he and I wrote super well together. Right, we could sit there and hammer out a song in an hour. But
Wow.
then, we'd have a bass player that, like, we just didn't speak the same language musically, and I would get very frustrated about trying to convey the kinds of ideas that I had to him. And so it's like, if you have someone you find that you just struggle to work with them, it's probably not worth working with them for very long. It's probably better that you
Yeah.
move on, and find someone that you do really engage with well.
Because yeah, if you were trying to do this game and teach yourself how to use Unreal Engine, and I'm not even sure what programming language that, if it's C++ or C sharp or
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
it would you would spend a lot more time working on stuff that doesn't give you satisfaction or that doesn't necessarily go as quickly for you as the
Yeah.
things that your brain just grabs onto more easily. So that's
Yeah.
great to have someone that's his thing and he loves doing that and that's his creative outlet and to just be on the
Yeah.
same page with him. I don't know how often that happens. And if it
Well,
does
and,
happen,
and
I
we
don't know
do.
for how long it stays that way.
Well, that's the thing. And we do try to meet each other in the middle. Like,
Hmm.
I have touched code a few times. I've done things like implement controller support and stuff like that. More like surface level kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
I'm going to be developing a lot of the star systems in the game. So I've been going through the code base with him recently so that I can learn how to do that and learn some light 3D modeling and stuff like that.
Okay.
So you kind of cross pollinate sometimes, but very often it is like I have my process, and then he has his process, and then we kind of meet up and say, hey, here's what I've been up to, and give each other input on that, right? So
Heck yeah.
like he's been developing the 3D model for like the flagship that you fly in the game, and that was based on my sketch that I gave him. But he changed that quite a bit in the process, and we got it to the point where we're both happy with where it's at now. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
like it's
Yeah.
we still collaborate in that sense. But yeah, it does require like I said, we talk to each other basically like all day. You know, it gets like to be kind of crazy where
And I think
yeah
that might be the thing that I appreciated most. Getting back onto TTRPGs, that's the thing that I appreciate most about the style of playing that we've come to is that collaboration where it's
yeah
almost like improv, where the DM throws something out and the players give you a wacky bounce that you didn't see coming, and then you grab it, you say yes, and you incorporate it into the world, and you show them how it's going to respond. I had a buddy that was really into electronic music years ago, and sometimes his computer would glitch and throw an extra sound, or sometimes he would be doing digital art and there would be a glitch, and he would always keep it. And I'm like, well, aren't you going to clean that up? And he's like, no. He's like, I view my computer as a partner in the process, and that was his contribution. And I just always thought that was a cool idea, right? Um,
that's neat.
and so I think that maybe that's why this style of role playing really appeals to me, where it's like, if I've got book control, if I've learned my rules as written, if I've, as Crafty Matt says, if I've RN the FTM, I'm sorry, I messed that up. if I've read the study manual, and I know where the tables are and I know how to use them, there is such an aliveness to that session where it's bouncing back and forth, and like your spaceship, you give them something, they take it, they put their spin on it, and then when it comes back to you, you're like, why not? That was one of the biggest
Yeah,
lessons that I learned actually by playing Intralopulus with Jeffro. Is I vividly remember this. This was the first time I was playing with these guys. I was intimidated because, to me, I'd been reading the Trilopulus session reports, and this was like me getting invited onto Critical Role for a Critical Role fan. And we were
right.
going into
Yeah,
the dungeon, and I was playing with these guys, and probably weirding them all out because it's just their game, right? Like, who's this? Who's this dweeb? But I
yeah.
was like, I'm gonna listen to see what I hear. And so Jeffro rolled on the noises table, and he came up with this hooting sound, right?
Yeah.
So he tries to like kind of hoo, hilarious. And I don't know, there's something about burrow owls. I don't know. Somebody mentioned it, and I got excited because as a gnome, I could speak to burrowing animals. And so I was like, "Oh,
Right.
is that a burrow owl?" And Jeffro was immediately like, "Yes, it is. There's like we found this menagerie, and there was like these 7 foot tall burrow owls, and they were locked up." And so I spoke with them using my gnome characteristic, and I just told them, "Hey, I will let you guys out of here if you choose the strongest to serve me for the rest of his days." And they agreed to it, and I picked the lock and let him out. And then I got an
Nice.
owl. And that was all just memed up on the spot because Jeffro was so keyed in. What makes my players interested? What makes them lean forward? What do they seize on? It was just a roll on a table. He was trying to do like a monkey hoot. He thought he was hooting like a
Right.
monkey, and we all thought it was owls, and he just went with it. And like that
Yeah. Yeah.
collaboration where you throw something out, they throw something back, and then you polish it together, and it becomes something that the players are fascinated with, that
Yes.
just happened in the moment. It's beautiful.
And it's hard for people to give up that control, and I won't lie, like it's been hard for me with certain things. Like when we first got together and started our band Horrify, um, I was doing the majority of the writing, and I was really kind of clinging to that process a lot, and I just had this sort of mad scientist approach of like, well, no, I can do this better. Just give it to me. Let me do the lyrics. Let me do all this. So, and then not maybe giving enough opportunity for contributions. Where when I started to calm down and ease up a little bit, and the drummer started throwing out guitar stuff at me, and when we started piecing it together more, it was like, oh, you know what, this turned out really well. Like I
Yeah.
don't have to be so afraid of doing a bad job that I hoard the job and try and be a perfectionist about it. I
Hmm.
can kind of loosen the reins a bit and let the other person have more creative control, because that is really what a collaboration is. And so even when I got together with Clayton and we started the board game, there was a part where we were really butting heads because he had these ideas and I kind of just was pushing enthusiastically all these other things at him, and he kind of felt like I was removing some of his agency. So,
Yeah.
D&D, I mean, like the I don't even have to get into the parallels there, I think,
Yeah.
right? Where when someone once you feel like that the DM is taking away your agency, it just becomes a less fun experience. And
Yeah.
the same, it's the same with any kind of collaborative work. You have to be on the same page, but you have to be open to each other's ideas and try and explore them, even if it feels uncomfortable sometimes, maybe.
You have to view your partner or your counterpart's enthusiasm as a resource, and you can
Yes,
spend it well or you can waste it, but you want to be cognizant of it, and you want to do what you can to recharge it for them. And that
for
will
sure.
lead you to
Yeah.
make different decisions than you would if you were just trying to play to a module or finish the story. That was the other thing about playing that way as a DM is I just felt a constant stress and pressure. How am I going to get these guys to the end of the episode? How am I going to give them, like if I'm playing Curse of Strahd, I want to give them that Watsy Curse of Strahd experience. And it's like, this is not a
Right.
television episode. This is not, everyone's supposed to get their own thing. And it was so much stress. And the more they acted and had fun and did their thing, the more strained I was to try to shoehorn it back to what it was supposed to be, right? And so
Yeah.
once you let go of that, it is so freeing to just say, I'm here to ref. I'm not here to make sure you guys live. I'm not here to make sure you have a fun time. I'm just here to give you a dangerous world that is going to react in its own interest to the things that you do.
Well,
And
it's that slippery slope effect in a way too, because it's like, okay, I'm going to push the players in a direction that I want them to go. Oh, that didn't work because now they run up against this thing they can't beat. Oh, that's okay. I'll fudge a dice roll, right? Like it just
yeah,
keeps
yeah.
going. As soon as you start to do that once, it's just what you're doing now, and it gets worse and worse. You don't want to do that.
Jeff Rose in the chat. He says the owl ruined the surprise of the stocked flail snail. That's right. He had a flail snail on the ledge. We were going to climb down in the dark, and that thing was going to beat the crap out of us. But because I could glide silently down on my owl with my bullseye lantern, I showed the thing, and everyone saw it. And they just started chucking stuff and throwing, arrows and stuff, and they killed it easily. So he said the
The
owl could
flail
just slide
snail.
down. So now no one got killed by it. But then the party left the shell in a secret room. And that's where the bounce back came. I don't know if you know this story. It's on his blog. You guys should read it. Um, Basically, that flail snail shell was one of the most insane sessions I've ever played where um, multiple party members got stuck to it, and then we got attacked by phantasmal forces. So we were trying to fight. We couldn't. We had to. That was the big thing everyone said to us back then is, "Oh, you play 1-to-1. What happens if you end a session in the dungeon?" We had to leave some suckers in the dungeon because we couldn't get them off of it, and
No.
so we killed a bunch of stuff. It was phantasmal forces, so we didn't get any XP and we didn't get any treasure because they all just disappeared. It was absolutely brutal, and that was the session that set up our own little mini Bronstein that happened inside the game, and may have gotten Jeff Rose. I don't know. I can't speak for him, but that may have got his wheels turning for what led into the Battle Bronstein and the Summer of Steen. Jeff Rowe, this was pointed out to me. I hate to even admit this, but this was pointed out to me by our buddy Dornell. If you read the rules about the gnomes, they can speak to burrowing mammals. So I never was supposed to get that, and Lenny wasn't supposed to be a thing. Oh no, I shouldn't have bust myself out like that. But um
Oh no.
oh no. He must have been some special type of mammal owl. We'll have to look into that and see how that was able to happen. Um yeah, so but like that's the kind of thing I'm saying where by doing that he paid off my passion and my fascination and my interest. And then I had a bonus that totally wrecked a surprise, a nasty surprise that he had planned for us. But
Yeah.
it kept leading to these back and forth escalating events that just went beyond anything that I or Jeffro or anybody playing could have imagined.
Well, and here's what happens is now the DM is actually playing the game and having fun,
Yeah.
right? Like he's you're a referee, obviously. That's your position. That's what your job is. But you're no longer just reading from this scroll of step one happens now step like microwave dinner instructions, and you're actually engaged and you're having to react and you're having to come up with
Yeah.
things on the spot and everything else. And it's just it's such a more enjoyable and interactive experience that way, you know.
The opposite is when you end a session, the DM is the only one thinking about the game between sessions.
Yeah.
Like that
Does it?
conventional, the DM is spending all of this time trying to prep and make sure everything goes smoothly, and the players show up. You need to explain to them what was happening the last time. You play the game, they're waiting for their initiative turn, they're on their phone doing nothing until they do the one self-centered act they're going to do on their turn because of the way it's set up. Like that's one of the things, one of the things I love about 1E is side initiative, where all of the players have to get together and say what are we going to do with our turn. It
Yeah.
forces that interactivity with the team. It's more team based than just each person doing their own single thing. um
Well, and here's the thing about 5e that I dislike, and I don't like to trash 5e just because I don't care. I don't want to get caught up in games I don't even play. But just 5e and other games like it in general, where it really is that. And it's like, well, what's the solution to that? If players are just doing their own thing, well, the solution is we'll make them all homogenous and they can all heal and they can all do this. And we can
yeah.
it's like you came up, you had this problem that already had a solution. You threw away the solution and then you came up with a worse one.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even know what the hell they're thinking. Where it's like we don't even why have a class? Why have individual skills? Why do why play this game anymore if that's how it's going to be? It's just independent people doing their own thing, and like you said, everybody else is diddling on their phones and their Game Boys and whatever.
That
I
feels
was like,
so
wow, what a
bad as
great
a DM.
experience, guys.
Yeah.
You know,
That feels so bad as a DM when you see that happen.
yeah, it's
It's
like if
like
you
when
went
I'm
to a book
reading.
club and you didn't talk about the books, you just sat
Yeah.
there and read in the same room together. And that was your definition of book club. Well, that was good. I got to chapter 2. See you guys.
Fun reading with y'all. Fun reading with y'all.
Yeah. Like, what's the point? Just to
Or
be in
like,
each
so
other's aura?
I'm reading The Hobbit to my kids. They get a chapter a night before bed. And like, if I'm reading and I'm like really getting into it and I'm doing the voices and everything, and then like they start talking to each other in the middle of it, oh, that's so deflating. And it's the
Yeah.
same kind of feel as when you're DMing a game and you look around and only one player's looking at you. And it's just like, what
You
is
know what you
going
do is
on?
you buy 3 copies of The Hobbit and then you make them read every second
I will
paragraph
point
as
like
they
a
scroll.
conductor when you're
Yeah, you.
reading, and then I'll point to my son, and it's his turn to start. Then I'll point to me, and I'll read the next one. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, you're Thorin, you're Gandalf, and you just do that. And then now they're engaged. Or you just turn
yeah,
on the movie for them. It's only 9 hours long.
this is a small channel. It's just us. We can bash 5e for a bit. Robert the Heel
Yeah.
Stevens says 5e assumes more subclasses fix everything. Yeah,
Right. It's just like, here's more band aids. We're going to pile them on top of the band aids that are peeling off. And that's the solution. And it's
yeah,
just like, I don't understand that from a design perspective, how you could come to that conclusion when there's something so fundamentally wrong with your game that people have to go on YouTube and spend 5 hours watching, like, here's the 900 do's or 900 don'ts and the 2 do's of D&D,
yeah.
right? It's
Or
like,
here's
holy
another
shit,
thing to
man! Like,
keep in mind while you're trying to run a game.
yeah,
I
you're
don't
like
want to keep
sweating.
anything
Like,
in
oh my
mind.
god!
I want to outsource my mind to the tables. I want to. That's the other
No
thing
wonder
that's
no
crazy to
one
me.
wants to DM.
The other thing that's crazy to me about 1E is how crunchy it is, how non-Euclidean it is to read it, especially the DMG, and yet how much easier it is to run. I don't.
Yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
what
make
doesn't.
it doesn't seem like that should be true, but it
Well, because it's like all of those tools you get in 1E, they are there to help you through that experience, but they are just that, they're tools. So there's like this really basic core structure that you can run AD&D on, and that's why people were able to run it for so long, because you can just get rid of all that other shit if you want to. Like, I'm not saying it makes for a good game, but I'm saying you have stats, you can roll that, you can do the basic combat steps, you can avoid, all these extra little things if you
yeah.
want. You're going to get a worse game, in my opinion, because the more you add to AD&D from the core rules, the more interesting it really does become. Like, combat, if you run a combat encounter the way you're supposed to run it, it's so much more interesting than I
Yeah.
walk up to the guy on the map and I hit the guy, because
Yeah.
it's like there's charge rules.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff you have to
Unarmed
consider. It's like
combat.
yeah, like it gets really interesting and depthful, and even just like the armor class or the hit adjustment tables and everything as well. And Jeffro was actually saying this the other day on Twitter or something. I can't remember now, Jeffro, but you were saying something about that. I think it was Sandy Peterson was saying, well, spears should be better in blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, AD&D fixed that already. That's what we had
Yep.
armor class adjustments for, because a spear is going to, have an advantage over a guy with a sword because
And
it's
I found that
longer.
out the hard way. It was actually Dornell was DMing. I had a cleric and I got a +1 mace, and I decided to charge with the fighters because I wanted to see what the thing could do. And we
Yeah.
charged a bunch of, I think they were gnolls or orcs or something, but they had longer spears than me. And my guy just got impaled on the way in. I never even got to swing the sucker. He just got taken out. I
Well,
was like, "You idiot! Let the fighters charge. You just move at
yeah.
normal speed and come in next."
And that's what should happen. And look, no shade on Sandy Peterson. Sandy, if you're watching this, which you're probably not, I loved your Doom
He's
levels.
never gonna
I don't
see
know
this.
anything about your RPGs. I've barely played them, and some of your opinions don't make any sense to me. But you help make Doom too. So what can I say?
Yeah. So Jeffro says AD&D hard to master, invisible in play. Folder Bloat said, reading the DMG is a test of your psychic metal. The book reads you back.
Yeah. When you
And
stare at the DMG, it stares back into you.
Alchemic Rakers says, I've never read the DMG, but this new Kickstarter splat book is what will fix my campaign.
It's 15 pages. It's a 15-page pamphlet. It's got the solution to all the problems. If you're watching this, you're bad at RPGs.
All right. This is what I was
Oh my
talking
god,
about
poor
earlier.
Sandy. You
Jeffro
know what?
says,
I'm
Sandy,
okay
if
to
you're
rip on
watching this,
Sandy.
you're bad
I'm
at
okay to rip on
RPGs.
Sandy.
You feel bad.
If he
Oh,
was
man.
George Romero or John Romero or John Carmack, then I definitely wouldn't say anything. But it's just Sandy Peterson. He made a few Doom 2 levels. Some of them weren't that great. Let's be honest.
All right. Yeah, I'm confident putting that out there because I don't think Sandy's gonna watch that. It's we're a small hometown little operation here on This Is Dunder Moose. Only people watching are the ones that know, and the ones that are in the know. So if you
It's all in
like this
good.
kind of
It's all in
stuff,
love.
yeah, if you like this kind of stuff, go ahead and click on if there's a subscribe button or a follow button. We're actually live on Twitter and YouTube right now, so and give Joel and I a thumbs up if you're liking what's going on. Give us that encouragement. Oh, let
Wait
me
for the
get your
thumbs down to come in.
let's get your I think I put it in the description, your YouTube channel. But I want to get the link as well. So
I don't even know what it is actually.
it's Nerdcognito on Rumble. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, it's at Nerdcognito on rumble.youtube.com.
I'll find you. I'll find you.
Here, I might help you. I'll help you. This will be the next 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Silent
As
clicking
we
of these
just
loud mechanical keyboards.
Oh man, I got it. Here
Okay.
we go. Jeffro asks, will Dundermoose get more than 500 followers now that the bros are distancing themselves from Jeffro? um, who's to say? Who's to say?
If you pay for them,
Yeah.
just
Um,
pay for them.
I'm not really great at this whole YouTube thing. I feel like if I paid more attention to it, like I'd have like the good thumbnails and the titles. Did anybody understand the thumbnail for this one? Like I was cracking up laughing when I made it. I was watching the inauguration, and they had this long shot of the Bidens and the Trumps standing there, and like this one propeller from Marine One just kept dipping, and it was like right in front of their faces the whole time. So you couldn't ever see, and like it was bouncing, but it just never quite cleared their faces, and I thought that was such a funny vibe. So I I
Deep
got
cut.
your little thumbnail. I don't even know, is this
It's a
from a
deep cut.
cartoon? I just recreated the Marine One helicopter blade and I stuck it right in front of your face because I was like, yeah. And then I realized nobody gets this. I don't even know
I
if anyone
liked it
watched the
though.
same broadcast. People thought it was a pencil.
I liked it because that little character looks angry. So he
Yeah,
looks like he's angry
it
because
looks
there's a
like it's poking
propeller blade sticking out his friggin' forehead.
him. Oh man, what are we talking about?
I don't know.
Folder below says,
Weather.
"What are the numbers on that? You laugh, you lose video." All right, that was okay. I don't know if you saw my "You Laugh, You Lose" video or not, Joel.
No.
It was one of those stupid ideas where you're like, I'm gonna do this. Um, yeah, Robert didn't get it. Okay, let me explain. While I'm just explaining myself now that this has become Dunder therapy session, uh, that was an idea I had back when I hit 500, and it was like, all right, you're gonna get monetized now. Now you need to start taking this seriously. And I thought, well, they probably don't do it anymore. But back in the day, there were a lot of on YouTube. There was a fad of doing these "you laugh, you lose" videos where you like get a bunch of funny clips, and then you
Oh
act like
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah,
just about to laugh at each single one of them. And the other
yeah.
thing that happened was my whole family got a really horrible stomach flu for Christmas, and I thought, what if while I was sick with the stomach flu, I had filmed a video of a "you laugh, you lose" challenge that I obviously was never going to laugh because I was just in such pain. And what if I just crapped myself at the end of the video? So it was amusing. Sometimes you just put something out there that's amusing to you. It might not be good for anybody.
I've done that
But
so
yeah,
many times though, and my wife is always the one to say, "What the hell are you laughing at? You know what's so funny about that?" It's like, well, I can't explain it to you because you're like a sane, sensible human being, right?
so so yeah, Robert didn't get it. Brian laughed. I don't know if he laughed at what I thought the clips were mildly funny. There's not a whole lot of like hilarious D&D clips, right? And Folder's got a quote. It says, you ever get that thing where your stomach hurts and you forget to breathe is going to work into my long-term place."
No, that's when you go to the doctor, sir.
Is this what Black Lodge Games does? Yeah, so I'm sorry, man. I'm making this video about another video I did. How ridiculous.
Videoception.
So what is your advice on the one hand, your advice to other creatives based on the stuff you've experienced and the stuff you've learned? And what would be your advice to people that are new to the tabletop RPG hobby? And what would be like a way to get into it if they want the good stuff?
So for the first part, I would say anything you're doing creatively. I won't get specific, but what I'll say is you do have to understand how to be self-critical. And what I mean by that is there's a difference between sort of saying, I suck, I'm garbage, this isn't working, and giving up, and really being able to look objectively at your stuff, almost like you were looking at something else that you enjoy,
Yeah.
and analyze it and break it down. And you know what? Like, it's a challenge to do that, and it takes practice to do it properly. But I think it's really essential when you can look at something and say, I know that this could be better, or I know why this is not good.
Mm.
And then what'll happen over time as you start to get better at these fields of interest, whatever they are, you will be able to look at something that you've done and right away you'll be able to peg it and say, yep, that works.
Yeah.
And you'll be right most of the time. Um, Very rarely now do I write something where I was confident that it was good, and then upon later criticism, had a bunch of people tell me this is crap.
Yeah.
That used to happen way, way more years ago. Every now and then, some things are just maybe too incendiary or too off-putting that some people just don't like them as a natural course of their own personalities or whatever. But I think that like I've gotten a lot better at looking at my stuff and knowing, this is kind of amateurish. I can make this better. And then when I'm happy with it, really saying, yep, that works. I know why it works, and I can, be happy putting this out into the world. And music is very much like that too. And my biggest litmus test for music is really my wife does not like the kind of music I make, generally speaking. So if I make her listen to it and she complains the next day at work that it's stuck in her head, then
Yeah.
I've probably done all right.
I'm somewhat of a musician myself. I have two rap videos on my channel. If
Oh,
anybody
excellent.
wants to jam out, ridiculous. Okay,
Excellent. I'm going
second
to be looking
question.
at those after. Yeah. So the second question.
Hypothetically,
Yeah.
let's just assume your house burns down and you lose
Yeah.
all of you lose that nice Shire map behind you. You lose all of your D&D books, and you have to move, and you move to a new city where you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And you're like, I need to get into this hobby. I want to
Yeah.
start playing. Where do you start? How do you put it back together? What's your move for getting back in, or for someone getting in for the first time?
Well, I would say that the most luck I had finding people that I didn't find horrible to be around was actually avoiding like those open game tables where
Yeah,
just anybody shows up, because it's like really hard to form a group of people that you get along with, just because it's just such a random disparate bunch. What I would recommend people do is go to work, at your job, go out and meet people doing something else. And when you start to find people you like, then bring them in to your
yeah,
game and create a game for them. Because the faster you can get players around you that you don't find to be a huge pain in the ass, the more fun they're going to have and the more fun you're going to have. So my last game, I brought in extra players from the metal community because I was hanging out with these guys at the bars all the time. And we
yeah,
were playing shows together, and I got to know them, and I really got to like them. And then I would bring up, hey, you ever play D&D? And most of the time now, a lot of people say yes, because it's so much more like in the public eye or whatever. That's who I would bring in, because I know I already don't hate these people. So the
yeah.
chances of me hating them in the game are far, far less. Whereas if like my only point of interest that I share with someone is a game, that is a total crapshoot. That guy could be a
Hmm.
total freak. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's such a broad thing that entertainment in general, that you can't get a real sense of somebody and how they're going to be, I think, just based on that. And what you really want is people that you dig and that you get along with
Right
and that
on.
are, on the same page. So that's what I would say to that.
And it sounds like you are in person. You prefer in person to online play.
You know what? It's funny that you should say that, because my AD&D game is on Discord.
Yeah.
Uh, but the reason it is because I wanted Clayton and his girlfriend in the game, and they live in Toronto.
Okay.
And now, what I've done to kind of like fix that, in a sense, is I don't like virtual tabletop crap, like
Yeah.
I don't know, Roll20 and all those things. So I just set up a webcam, like a super high quality webcam, pointing down at my table, and I can still do all the miniatures and the dice rolling and whatever I need to do. In this case, it's like cubes and chits and stuff. It's not really miniatures anymore because those are also
Uh-huh.
worse on camera when they're like a top down view.
Yeah.
But at this point, I really don't mind playing on Discord as long as everybody has decent equipment. If you have some guy that comes in with like the worst microphone and like it's crackling and he's disconnecting all the time, that sucks, right?
Yeah.
But we haven't had that problem,
Or
so I
if he
don't feel
like
like I'm
takes the
missing
mic
out.
with him into the bathroom and just urinates loudly for all to hear.
Sure, right? Anything like that, and
Rob knows what I'm talking about.
it's
Not
not
that
that
he
I don't
did it.
like
He
playing
was
in
there when it
person,
happened. I'm not saying Rob did it. I
but it's
just
also
realized
harder
that
to
could
get
come out.
people. It's
We
also
keep
harder
talking
to
at the
get
same time.
people. Sorry,
We both
I'll let
pause
you
at
go. I'll
the
let
same
you go.
time and then we talk.
Yeah, there we go.
Go ahead.
Now nobody gets to talk. No, the thing about the online game, so Discord, is that it's easier to get people to commit to that, right? Like half my players are like in the northwest. They're like halfway across the city at 2 million people, and then there's guys in Toronto and everything. So to say, hey, we got to just get on our computers at the same time on a Saturday night is so much easier. Yeah.
This just jumped the rails, man. I'm sorry. We're trying to keep it together here, but sometimes chat gets ridiculous.
You have to answer that now if you've been piss maxing or not.
I'm
This is
not.
important information.
I do. I'm a fan of saying, "Hey guys, why don't we do a bio break?" And everyone just goes, mutes their mic, takes care of their business. We don't
Yeah.
have to hear any urine coming out of anybody's urethras.
I would say if you have to go to the bathroom during a session, they lose a level on that character. Just level them right down.
You get one level of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Your essence leaving.
That's what one time means, fellas.
That's
If you piss in
always
real
what
life,
they say. That's what the
yeah, you
ankle
piss in the
biters are
game.
always like. Oh well, what if my do I have to make my guy go to the? They always want their guy to go to the bathroom for some reason. I'm almost to
They're
the point where
obsessed
I'm
with
like,
that.
yes, that's what it means. It means your guy has to go pee when you go pee.
I've literally that's the interpretation I've heard of one time from some people is we're in the woods and we're playing a session for 4 hours, which means we're emulating every step you took in a 4-hour session. It's like, are you insane? Like, like how could you even come to a conclusion like that? That's the most ridiculous thing.
I'm sorry,
Unincentivized
Chad
bottles.
is just getting ridiculous. You're in the
I think if you want, if you're really committed to D&D, you should have a toilet installed under the table.
yeah.
And then everybody can just pull down their zipper and take care of business
D
right
and
then
D
and there.
stands for diapers and Discord.
diapers and depends.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the theory crafters. They don't play stuff that's obvious to people that play, trips them up. And they're like, well, what about cock-a-doodle time? Did you think about that? And it's
Yeah.
like, dude,
Yeah,
just
dipshit. Did you
play
think
with
about
some
how I
friends.
well, and it's like even just the idea of having a YouTube video or any kind of space and having opinions on things, and you don't even understand like the basics of how they operate. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to talk about Bronstein for half an hour. What's a Bronstein? I don't know,
Yeah.
but it sounds bad.
It sounds like
It's like you don't even
something that
understand
makes
what it
my
is.
feelings hurt.
Yeah. It's like guys, do your research here, man. It takes 5 minutes. We have Google now.
Yeah.
Like we have cell phones. You have a computer in your pocket and you can look up any piece of information anytime you want. And it's like you still feel like you need to be spoon-fed this shit for some reason.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
Well, as my friend Unfiltered ID, she likes to say, if you're not in the arena getting your butt kicked, then your opinion doesn't matter. And so,
Yeah.
like, the best question to back off an ankle biter is, what happens when you try it in your game? Because if they haven't played it, they can't, as I said before, they can't get in their head. They can't fit all the second and third order effects of some of the stuff that, like, the minute you play, you understand. And nobody asks that question who's playing because it's obvious in the moment. Only people who don't play or don't play it that way or whatever have these
Yeah.
objections that are totally built up from mental lawyering.
And I've done that to people, and what will happen if they haven't done it? They'll be like, "Oh, I did it so long ago, I don't remember." Right? Like that's that cop out. Like that was years ago.
We
It's like,
did
so you
it, and it
remember
was
doing
lame,
it.
and we stopped, and that's why we play Railroad Adventures now.
Yeah,
And you
that's
can
all I
buy mine
remember
on
about it.
Drive Through RPG.
It's like you're 29 years old. Your memory's not that bad. Give me a break. I'm not
Older
buying
bloke.
this.
A, ta- a table. I can't even read it. You got
Oh,
to read it,
man.
man.
A table of randoms can't imagine the second or third order effects of having friends.
Oh man. Oh man. Well, I was thinking I didn't post it, but Crafty had an absolute horror story. Um, my worst tabletop stories from an open table from a coffee shop. I sat next to a degenerate that started watching furry porn in public. It was so jarring. I nearly left the hobby. And that's when Bradford Walker points out the clubhouse. The next big change we will bring to the hobby, degens from the soup aisle out.
Absolutely. The clubhouse is the way to go because, again, it's like you're not only finding people you like for the most part. I mean, you might get some asshole in there that is, whatever, the butt of some jokes here and there. But for the most part, most
Yeah,
of these
yeah.
clubhouses are comprised of people that, like each other. And because you all have your own backgrounds and your own feelings about these things, but you also are all on the same page, these ideas only get better and improve as you filter them through these other people. So you bring some rule thing to the table and say, I came up with this idea, and then it gets tested and you see if it works. And if it doesn't, someone might jump in and say, well, look, that kind of sucks, but there's something we can build on here.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of, like, that is what the bros, that's what's so cool about the Bro SR and the wargaming clubhouse in general, is that
And
idea
it
of,
is a movement that's growing. Like it started with
yeah,
Trilopulus and Jeffro, and then people left that campaign and started their own bro campaigns. Like that doesn't
right.
happen if you're doing something that doesn't work or if you're doing something that is not as good as what's out there, right? They're like, I'm leaving this to start my own, and I'm going to use these principles. And
Yeah.
and those tables are growing in number. There are players that are joining it. Now you were talking about your game. You've got 2 sessions going per week now, yeah?
We're getting
Or
to the 2 sessions. So what I've hit critical mass with the one party. I think we're at like
okay.
6 or 7 players for one. I don't want to add any more. And then I've got about like 6 or 7 other people that are waiting for me to get back to them. Sorry, I've been busy this week.
You got a
But
lot of going on, man. You got a lot of
yeah,
plates spinning.
but I will be, and they're going to be like the B group in the world, right? So I'll probably be running 2 games a week at this point, or every one game bi-weekly or something. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it, and
How long do you think it's going to go before one team becomes aware of the other and starts plotting against them?
it won't be long. I will make it not be long.
Yeah,
Right, like
it's so
we're
good.
in a super small part of this map. Like we're in the north, like eastern region of Greyhawk, like the snow barbarian little
Hmm.
area right below the mountains. There's like 30 hexes there, and this is just where most things happen. And I haven't needed, like, they haven't needed to expand and go and do other stuff. There's so much action happening in that territory that
Yeah,
there's no reason not to keep everything nice and compact, and people have been really happy with just that. And we've been doing that for like 6 months now or something, almost every week.
right
So
on, man.
yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I have really enjoyed what you have brought to the Bro SR. I appreciate your takes, I appreciate your insights and your attitude and your charm. And I was cracking up when the whole thing went down with the oh he's leaving, oh he's back. I fumbled the time a little bit. The timing. I thought your episode with Nerd Cognito was gonna go up before it did because you recorded it well before, and I let the cat out of the bag
Yeah.
on X for those who are watching. Um,
Yeah. We recorded that Sunday morning, actually. So
yeah.
uh,
So
I
I
didn't,
thought I was
but
good, but yeah, no,
whatever.
I let the cat out of the bag. But you were the mystery seed that was coming in. You're going to be facing off against Rump, who narrowly
Yeah.
defeated the curator, and
Yeah.
so I can't wait to see how that goes on as we continue the brackets for the appendix and the Jeffro crown, and
Well,
somebody is going to rise up and maybe take the belt away from Crom at the end of this.
Rump's a competitor. I'll say that Rump's a competitor. So I crapped all over him last time. partially because that was just the tone of things, partially because it's true. I think he is a chump, and I think I am going to beat his head into the ground
Right on.
like a plastic doll. But I also have to respect him, and I have to say there's a chance, Rump, that you could beat me here. There's a chance you could take the crown. So I'm showing you respect, and I am going to take you seriously, and I'm
I
going to bring
feel
it
like
to the
there's
table.
another B dubs being channeled right now. Like you were on that wavelength, man. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thanks for being willing to come on my show. I know you've got a busy schedule. I know you've been on other shows with other people that are more inflammatory than me, but I've really enjoyed. We're coming up on 2 hours. I want to thank everybody for being on with us. And any last words for this group of 134 brave souls that are watching the show right now before we sign off?
Yeah, my ass is getting sore.
Well, I can't
But
top
no,
that.
but yeah, I don't know if you guys enjoyed seeing me ramble about stuff. Find me on Twitter.
Yep.
Watch
At
out
the
for our
complete DM, you spell complete the old school way.
yeah with the A in there. And I don't know. Just thanks for having me, Dunder. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
Right
I
on,
liked
man.
actually getting into the weeds and talking about D&D a lot tonight. So that was great.
So yeah, and when your video game's about to come out, we'll do this again and we'll give it a boost and get everybody thinking and talking
Sure.
about it. All right,
This
have
summer,
a
babe.
great
Well,
one, guys.
partially this summer. So take care.
Right on. I think next week we got DM Blackwall, and I might have a couple other surprise guests involved as well. So we'll see you guys next time on the channel.